So the first thing that you need to do is to properly set up your workstation. You need a damp cloth, a cutting board, paring knife, peeler, chef knife, a baking sheet appropriately sized for the amount of product that you are going to be cutting, and I like to line it with a piece of saran wrap that has been adhered to the baking sheet with water. This is your garbage pail, and then the product that you're going to be working with. The first vegetable that we will start with will be the red peppers. What you're going to do is you're going to cut off your top and your tail. You can always save these pieces. They can be used as garnish in salads or for our roasted vegetables. Then what I like to do is cut the pepper in half, and then with a paring knife, remove all the fibrous ribs and all the seeds. Same thing with this other half. Then you are going to cut these into 1/4-inch strips, and you're going to proceed for the number of portions that you need, and 2 strips of a 1/4 inch make a portion. When you're working with radishes, they can come in various sizes. So a small one like this, you would just trim off the ends, and if there are any bad spots, cut those off as well. That would be a portion. And in the case of a much larger one, you have to use your judgment in terms of what becomes a portion. Again, for one like this, I would probably cut it into quarters, and that would be a portion. For broccoli, what you want to do is cut the broccoli sort of close to the floret. That is a good portion size. But sometimes you will find on broccoli there is yellow underneath where it's paler. What I like to do is just trim that off. In terms of size, what you want to be thinking is sort of just a nice dipping size, and that can fit into your mouth. The cauliflower is again working from the underside, following its natural florets. And if you have to cut a larger piece into smaller florets, just sort of slice down a bit of the root and let it split where it splits naturally. It gives it much more of a natural look as opposed to when you've actually sliced through the cauliflower like that. This becomes a portion size. Working with the cucumber, we leave the skin on since that offers color and crunch. And what you're going to do is you're going to make what I call thick 1/4 slices on the bias. And it is important to keep your slices in order that they were cut, so that when it comes time to cutting them in half, again on the bias, and this is a portion. For carrots, I like working with a peeler like this, and I work holding the carrot in one hand, piece of paper towel down below for catching the trimmings, and with this, I just go down in one stroke from top to bottom, because all you really then have to do is pick that up and transfer it off your cutting board. Now, carrots come in various sizes, lengths, and thicknesses. Here it's very narrow, here it gets much larger. That would be a portion of a narrow carrot. And when you get into the larger size carrots, a portion would be a large one cut into 2. For celery, again, bias cuts, just like that, and that becomes a portion. And the easiest one of all is the grape tomato. Just washed as is, 1 per person. So once you have cut all of your vegetables, and what I recommend is that you actually place them onto the baking sheets in groups of, in this case I've done them in groups of 5, so that we are doing a platter that will have 15 portions of each vegetable. Normally at the McKernan we just do 5 vegetables. The grape tomatoes, cucumbers, carrots, broccoli, and red peppers are our standard, but occasionally we'll add in radish, celery, or cauliflower. And there might be times where I might indicate that we might use 6 or 7 vegetables instead of the basic 5. But the way to keep track of how many you've cut, for example, when you're working on an event for 100 people, it's so much easier as you count out your portions. So for example, red pepper, 2 of these is a portion. Each bundle has 10. So I know I have 15 portions ready to go. And at that point, I'm going to start plating the platter. We're going to do a small platter, One of the skills that you will develop is the ability to choose the right size platter for the quantity that you have. Some of it is trial and error. What you do is you just kind of visually determine how that will fit onto a platter. You can also always do a second platter, or 3 or 4 depending, rather than one large one. The advantage of doing multiple small platters is that as guests go through one and it begins to look empty or messy, you can refresh it and bring out a new one. So I like to separate out the colors to give a bit of a break between the reds and the greens. And I'm just going to start with the peppers. Broccoli, you're going to start from the outside edge and build it toward the center. What you want to accomplish with the broccoli and the cauliflower is basically hiding all of the stems. I'm going to move on to the carrots. Notice that I have all the points falling in the same, or going in the same direction. With the cucumber over by the peppers, and again the same principle, I like to have the pointed edges facing out. I'm going to carry on with the remaining vegetables. So I'm going to put the cauliflower beside the carrot. You do want to think about color placement, and you can kind of push and make room as need be. And there's always the option of removing a couple. I'm going to fill in with some radishes. With the celery, it gets harder to arrange, so just a very informal. And then last, the tomatoes. And there you go, your finished crudité platter.